Hello everyone, and welcome to week 4 of English 121. I apologize for the delay for the lecture being posted. I had a technical error with the program I use to record the lecture, so hopefully it's now resolved and we won't have a delay again. Thank you for your patience. This week, what you need to complete is the following. First, watch this lecture. I'm going to be talking about character in short fiction. Then I'd like you to actively read the 2 stories we're going to be reading. First, read the few pages on character in our chapter 83 through 85 and 116 through 117. Then I'd like you to also closely read Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne, found on pages 92 through 101, and Cathedral by Raymond Carver, found on pages 105 to 116. This week you'll have 2 formal assignments. The first thing is you'll be participating in a conversation about what makes characters memorable. Then you'll do a reflection journal on Young Goodman Brown. I also have a sign-up wiki for conferences this week. Make sure you sign up. And I will be talking briefly about close reading groups. I will be talking briefly about close reading groups. But I will give you more information about it next week. So before you begin reading the chapter on character, on our interactive site there is a video with Dana Joya where he's going to be talking about character, and it's a nice little introduction to speaking about character. Basically, the reality of character is that a character in a story is just an imagined person who inhabits a story. And sometimes that person can be not a person, right? There's stories where that are narrated by a dog or narrated by inanimate objects. So it just depends on the author. But in most cases, the character is an imagined person. There's a lot of terminology we use to talk about those people. But the first thing you really want to think about is what makes a character really memorable in a story, and what makes a character someone who you connect with in a story. And oftentimes it is the characters that we most connect with because they're the human part of the story that we can relate to. And just like real people, characters, good characters are not just one-sided. They have flaws, they make mistakes, they say the wrong thing, and that's what makes us really connect to them. I think you'll really see that in the story Cathedral this week. The character really changes in that short story. So there are characters that kind of resurface again and again in stories. They're called stock characters. That's like the mad scientist, or the princess, or the characters that you see again and again, and that don't challenge the characteristics that you associate with them. Those are stock characters. A character in a story is driven by their motivation. That's what they're trying to achieve or do, or the reason why they are making the choices that they're making. So if you look back at something like A&P, the boy's motivation actually shifted in that story. It started with him seeing, it seemed like he was trying to be a hero, and his motivation was trying to impress the cute girls. But in the end, his motivation seemed to shift, and that shift in motivation is what makes us really think deeply in a story. There's also flat and round characters. A flat character is a one-dimensional character. That's a character that doesn't change at all, right? Then there's round characters, and those are more, it's like looking someone from 360 degrees. You see them do things that are more human-like rather than just always doing the same thing every time. There are static characters and dynamic. Static characters stay the same. Dynamic characters change. Also, there's the idea of a hero, right? There's the classic hero is someone who goes out and on a quest and through trials and tribulations either changes himself or changes something for society for the good. An anti-hero is like a hero, but he's missing some parts. A lot of times you see an anti-hero in modern fiction. There's a lot of anti-heroes. These are, characters who seem heroic. They're going out to try to change something, but they're missing some important hero characteristics. Maybe they aren't very outgoing. Maybe they aren't handsome. Maybe there's some flaw in them, and that makes them an anti-hero. When you think about character in the stories that we're going to be reading this week, I want you to think about a couple of things. You want to identify who the most important character of the story is. So, for example, if you're reading Young Goodman Brown, the most important character in that story, the protagonist in that story, is Young Goodman Brown himself. There are other very important characters, but the main character, the one that makes the decisions that affect the actual outcome of the story, that's the protagonist, and that's Young Goodman Brown. You want to consider the ways the characters' personalities and values are communicated. In some stories, that will be very directly, right, through the characters' actions. In some stories, it'll be in their head, and you'll just see their thoughts. In other stories, you'll have to watch it through their interactions with other people. So you really want to follow how you're understanding who this person is in the story, and based on the personality traits and their values that they're communicating. A very tricky person to look at in this way is the protagonist from Cathedral. You really need to think about what his personality and his values seem like in the beginning of the story and how they evolve and change in the end. Consider how the story's action grows out of a central character. What effect do his actions have on what happens, his or her actions have on what happens in the story? Alright, so here's the checklist that I'd like you to print out, and I'd like you to use this as you look through as you look through the stories that we're reading, and try to understand, try to be able to answer these questions after you've read both our texts. So in addition to actively reading, you want to think about these questions as well. So think about who the main character or protagonist of the story is. What are the character's physical, mental, or moral or behavioral traits? Which of these seem important to the action of the story? Does the main character have an antagonist in the story, someone who's working against them, and how do they differ? Does the way the protagonist speak reveal anything about his or her personality? And if the story is told in the first person, what is revealed about how the protagonist views his or her surroundings? What is the character's primary motivation? Does the motivation seem reasonable to you? And does the protagonist fully understand his or her motivation? One thing also to look at is, do those motivations change as the story progresses? And in what ways is the protagonist changed or tested by the events of the story? So this week, we're going to be talking about, after you read Cathedral by Raymond Carver, I'd really like you to think about these questions and answer them as part of the conversation. And as always, please make sure your post is posted by Saturday night at 11:59 p.m. and then make sure you respond to your peers before the end of our week on Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. And remember, the more you guys interact in this space, the more you'll learn about these texts. I've been so impressed with how you guys are talking about the stories that we're reading for this class. I want you to keep up the good work. So now it's your turn to examine a story based on character. Actively read Cathedral by Raymond Carver, and don't forget to read Carver's biography, which is found at the beginning of the text, right? And also think about when it was published. That's important. And also the title. Why is he calling it Cathedral? That's a very important part of the story. Then after you actively read the text, now I'm not taking you through the questions. I hope you have your active reading chart in front of you. I expect you to be actively reading the text. Answer all of the questions listed below. I want you to practice using evidence from the text to support the points that you're making in your posts. So, who is the main character or protagonist in the story? What is his motivation? What character traits does he exhibit? Is he reliable or unreliable? How and why does he change over the course of the events of the story? What do we know about the other characters, the wife, the blind visitor, Robert? Discuss the significance of the cathedral. Why is it important to the story? And finally, what is revealed about sight and seeing in this story? Alright, the other story we're going to be reading this week is Young Goodman Brown. This is a classic story, you guys. It's a really, really great story, just like Cathedral. These are both excellent stories that are well respected in the literary community. But Young Goodman Brown is set a very long time ago, so it's really important that you let yourself get into the language of the text. I'd like you to think about who is the protagonist in Young Goodman Brown. Were the events in the forest a dream, or did they really happen? I want you to use evidence to support your answer. Finally, do a character analysis of Young Goodman Brown before, during, and after his journey in his woods, because his walk in the woods really changes him. How does his character change based on the events of the story? I'd like you to look up information about the Salem witch trials and Puritanism. Both of these, both the religion and the historical events, are referenced in this story. How does Hawthorne address the concept of faith in Young Goodman Brown? And finally, what isn't listed here, the bonus question. I'd like you to compare the community in Young Goodman Brown to the lottery. Now, this is the bonus question that's going to prove to me that you're listening to my lectures. If you answer that question as part of your journal entry this week, you'll get an extra point. But please, it's really important to start comparing these stories. Don't just look at this story. Think about how this story has anything to do with the lottery and the way the tradition is kept in the lotteries. All right, finally, over the course of the semester, we're going to be meeting twice to go over your active reading. Please sign up for one time slot listed on the wiki. Ideally, and you do that by just saying editing wiki and replacing the little line where next to the time with your name. You want to try to choose a time that you can meet me personally in my office on campus, 1031A. But if you can't, you can always leave, you can set up a phone time. So just choose one of the times and place your phone number there, and then I'll know that you want to meet over the phone, and I will call you during the time you select. In your meeting, you're going to need to bring your book and show significant evidence of active reading. If you are meeting over the phone, you will need a way of showing me your active reading, so we'll have to arrange that over the phone. I don't have it posted yet, but there will be close reading sessions coming up soon. What will happen is you will sign up for a week where you will be in charge of actively reading an additional text and teaching it, basically having a critical conversation about it over video or virtually as part of the class. And I will give more details about that next week, but I wanted you to know that a lot of the texts we're going to be looking at are poetry, and do not be afraid of poetry. We're going to have fun reading it. But more details will be posted next week. Alright, that's it for this week on character. Enjoy these amazing texts, you guys, and feel free to reach out to me. I'm here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I have office hours in the afternoons, and you can also call me at my desk phone. That's 707-256-7748, or you can send me an email at idunkel@napavalley.edu. Next week, we're going to be talking about setting, and we get to talk about one of my favorite authors, Jack London, and his short story, To Build a Fire. All right, I'll see you guys online.